Hello YouTube. Thought I'd do a video for you. Actually, I believe this will end up being maybe two videos. And actually it's for two separate people. This is for Cliff Stamp, and it's also for Tim Troyer of Sugar Creek Forge. It's time for the Sugar Creek Forge Build Along 2014. And Cliff had asked me to do a video on some stuff, and this is going to tie in really well with the build along, so I thought I would just combine the two. So really happy to see Tim do this again. It was a ball last time. We all had a blast with it. And he gave me this nice t-shirt, which I couldn't wear at the time, and he asked me what size I wore, and I said, they don't make them that big, you don't have one. So he just picked this one out. I think this is a 2X, and he said, well, I still want you to have one. He gave Mary one and I one, so we would have them. And 184 pounds later, and it worked. I can fit into it now. I'm really proud of that. And I like it. It's a really nice shirt. Hoping to add a 2014 shirt, Tim. I hope that you'll do them again. So the video that I'm going to do is on finishing. When you're done with your, in this case, it's going to be a friction folder that they're making, but it could be any knife. Straight knife, lock back, doesn't matter. We're going to kind of figure out what we're going to put on it for a finish, how we want to do it, and there's several methods to do it. Each finish, and I thought that I would cover one first that I use the most. It takes a little more time, but I think it really gives you superior results. If you're a knife maker and you're doing things in a production environment, this is not how you want to do this, because it's, you know, a little time consuming. But if, like me, you're a hobbyist or a person on the build along that's making your first knife, I think this is an excellent way to do it. Even after you make a few knives, it's still an excellent way to do it, as long as you have the time. If not, we're going to cover the other ways to put different finishes on a knife, and how to do it in a manner that would be more at home with someone trying to make a living at it, or at least trying to turn out a volume of knives. So in this case, we're going to use this little knife. It's let's see, the Titadole Cutlery, and it is from a friend of mine, Colin, and I'm tickled to have this. He sent this to me as a gift, and I love spear points, I love old-timey designs, I love springback, so this is all of that. It's has a nice long nail pull, which I like. I like this little saber clip grind right here, and I love spear points and single blades, and it's just got everything going for it. It has some spotting on the blade. Now, if we were to use this, obviously it's not going to bother it whatsoever, but since we're going to do finishing, we'll go ahead and spruce this up a little bit, and we'll touch up the bolsters and do some other stuff on it too, and kind of tie it all in together, because there's some other tips on this that I can show you that will save you some grief and a few mistakes when you put the handle slabs on your friction folder for the build along. So let me readjust the camera and we'll get started. And the first method that I'm going to cover is pretty much strictly by hand. We'll use a buffer only at the very end of this. And generally, guys and girls, the less you use a buffer, the better finish you're going to have. Now, the risk that you run when you use a buffer and try to make it do the work that you should be doing here at the bench with your sanding is that it will excuse me, trash can out of the way. When you have nice, sharp, crisp lines like this has along here, if you try to use a buffer to compensate for your hand sanding, you're going to round those all off, and you can just really ruin the look of the knife, especially one that has an older outline like this knife. So all our sanding is going to be done on a hard surface. Now, what I mean by that is not this surface, but the surface of the sandpaper that contacts the knife blade is going to be on something hard. Now, that may be this surface, or it may be a piece like this that I wrap paper around. Sometimes I have them with different contours. You can make any kind of little sanding block that you want. Here's one that I use a lot. I've made several of these in different configurations. Just whatever works for you. But the reason you want to use that is twofold. One, it will stop you from washing out those lines, and two, if there are mistakes in the blade from when you ground it, if you use your finger, you're just going to follow those. So if you've got a dip or a divot or anything in here, you're going to follow that with your finger. It's going to go in and out of it, and you're going to accentuate it. And when you do go to get to that final polish stage, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's like doing a finish on a car. You know, 90% of the work is in the primer coats and sanding that down just right, because if there's any scratches, scrapes, ripples, or anything, when you put that glossy paint on it, it just pops. And this will do the same. So basically what I do is I use a series of sandpapers, and right up here, I'll move you for just a second, you can see I have these, and my wonderful wife Mary has set these up in order for me. I go from 100 grit, and there's actually one down here for various 68, you know, things like that. And I go up to about 2,500 grit up here. And I've got 150, 180, 220, 320, 400, 600, and 800, 1,200, and 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500. You can stop anywhere along the way and get a much different finish with these. So the beauty of this is, for very little cost, you're going to get just a tremendous range of finishes that you can put on your knife. Try and get you in here a little bit more. I wish I could, I really need to see if I can hook this to a TV screen or something where I can watch it as I'm doing it. We'll try that and hope for the best, guys. So the first thing I want to do is select the finest paper that I can use on this. There's no use putting heavier scratches on it than what's already there. Here's one of the Kauri X blades. I'm making two of these, one for Cliff and one for myself. And where it's fresh off the grinder and there's grinder marks, generally whatever I came off the grinder with is what I would start with on this. If I ended up with a, let's say a 220 grit belt on the grinder, I would start with that, or maybe a little more, maybe a 320 grit paper, and that'll be the first one I want to use. I don't want to create extra work for myself by actually putting deeper grooves in it than what's already there. So here we're starting with a pretty much finished blade. This was taken down to a very fine finish, so let's start with this one. I think we'll start on 400, and we will work out the rust spots and things, which shouldn't take long. A, it's a softer carbon steel, and B, it's just not that deep on any of those. So what I do, I've got this two-sided strop. It's an old one that I no longer use, and I just C-clamp it to the table. I left the leather on this side. I took it off this side, so this is just a 90-degree corner wood here. And remember that any sanding we do, we want a solid surface here, or if our paper is here, what you never want to do is take the paper and be sanding like this, because you're going to wash out your lines. You're going to do a lot of bad stuff that you don't want to do. So I just take it, I wrap it tightly around here and form it to it as tightly as I can get it. And then on the end, I want to clamp it down with a little spring clamp. And that's our basic setup. Let me see, I hope that clamp is not going to get in your way. Oh, I don't think that'll be bad. Let me swing this around just a hair. And the paper will last a good bit longer while you're using it and not clog up if you use a lubricant. You can use water. I use it a lot. I like to use Windex. You can get a huge jug of it for almost nothing. It's cheap, and it kind of dries up. It's just not messy, and that's pretty good. So we've got that, and some paper towels to wipe our blade off with from time to time. And we're just going to wet that down liberally. And we're going to start on one side. I usually put my finger up here. And normally what I would do is start down here, but I don't know how good you guys can see that. And then I work my way, always working away from the edge. I never, work down the paper like this, because the first thing I'll do, obviously, is cut right into the paper, and we don't want to do that. So we're always working away from the edge. I hold the knife down good and firm with my offhand. If it's a longer blade, I use two hands. A short one like this, I'll just put my finger on it like this. And right along this edge, where that corner is, when you get right down to this bottom part, you can really get a lot of good work done by getting right up in that corner with it. So and I just go along it. You can feel when the paper stops biting, and you know it's time to move it up, and I just move it up section by section. So let's take a look at this. And we started with that, and just in that short amount of time, that's what we've done. And our marks are almost already pretty much gone. There's still some pitting, and we would just keep on with this until we got them all out. And from time to time I re-wet. And again, whenever this paper stops, and I'm not going to take these all the way out. I will show you one trick though when you're doing this, and that is this. Let's say that right out here I had a spot, and it may be up here, maybe down by the blade edge, but I want to concentrate on that. Again, always on this hard surface. What I do is, let's say that the spot is right here. Is down here by the edge, right in this area. On the corresponding, on the other side, I'm going to put my finger there, and I'm going to put pressure down with that finger, because wherever you push, and if it was down here, I'd do the same. If it was on the back, I would put my fingers on the back. Wherever you push, that's where it's going to put the most pressure. and that's where it's going to do the most good. So I like to go a little bit longer than you think you should go. When you think you've got all the scratches from your previous grit, whether it be off the grinder or the sandpaper here down to this 400 grit size, and this is actually looking pretty darn good. What I like to do is kind of let this paper dry out, and when you let it dry out and keep using it here, just like a stone, it's going to load up and kind of fill in the empty spaces between the grit, which means that it'll go just a little bit finer and you're not going to put such deep scratches in. Now why do that? Well, it just makes it that much quicker and easier when you move to the next grade of paper. And we're looking pretty good on there. Now remember, we also have to do this clip area. We're not touching that, and you have to bring that over, and again you're going to do that. And I like to do a few strokes with it at a given angle, turn it over, and I've done enough of these that I pretty much am sure that's right, and it is. And we can still keep that nice, clean, crisp line because we got this good solid base under us. So I would do that a little bit more than this where the paper's drying out down here. I would just let it load up. And also another thing you can do is when you get to this stage where you're loading the paper up, then you can lessen the pressure that you have on there. And we're going to take this down to whatever finish we want to take it to. And in this case, I think we'll go ahead and just pretty much mirror polish these and take you through the whole process. And I'm just going to do this one side for the demonstration. So that'll hit it for the 400, and I'll just set the paper over there, let it dry. And we move up to 600 and 800. And having this stuff all in order like this is a huge, huge help. And when I sand wood or something like that with this, I always save this paper to do this with because you really don't put much wear on the paper. There's still tons of grit on it. You just kind of clog it up, and as soon as you hit it with the Windex, you know that'll come right off. Alrighty. So now again, it's just more of the same, and make sure that you get up by this tang area. You'll find that that's the hardest area to get to, and to get all the way up in the corner here, right here where the little choil area is, I raise the knife up like this to get right on that 90-degree edge, and then I kind of roll it as I come into it like that. And at this stage, we're not really worried with taking strokes across the whole edge of the blade. We're going to get to that point, but right now, were this a bigger knife, you could do it in sections or whatever. Now that's going to leave some marks that we will take out later, but right now you're not too concerned with that. And whenever I need to put pressure on that, I just transfer the pressure with my fingers to that point. And you can see where we're at in just a few minutes. It's actually taken me longer to tell you about it than it is to do it. And we'll do our little cutout on top here, a little grind up there, being careful to stay on that And again, right there where it meets, I'm going to roll down onto the edge of that paper, that 90-degree corner. And if you do your work here, you should have almost no work left to do on the buffing wheel. The mistake people make, or one of the mistakes they make, is going to the buffing wheel way too early. They want to hurry up, they want to see it, and they think, oh, I'll just let the the buffing compound on the wheel do the work and take out any imperfections. Well, it won't. Buffing compound, really the amount of cutting that it does is minute. It polishes, it really doesn't cut. And you can spend a very frustrating time trying to get out a single scratch. And when you do, what you're going to find out is that you have washed out all these nice crisp lines will be rounded over, and they're just going to look like crud for you. So again, I'm letting the paper dry out, and you can see I didn't do that very long. Now obviously using a high carbide steel or a very hard steel, yes, it's going to take longer, but I've found nothing yet that you can't do. If you do the majority of the work here, you won't have to worry about orange peeling on the buffer. That's another thing that will happen. If you try to do it too much on the steel, you will erode the soft parts of the blade away faster than the hard parts, and you'll get literally what looks like the peel of an orange, a bumpy surface. Now people can actually make that surface work to their advantage, and but if you're trying to mirror polish, it's just, you're ruined at that point. You've got to go back here to the bench. When we get done here, this thing will be pretty much done. We're going to have a little haze on it, and all we're going to have to do is take that down and just take that haze off with the buffer, basically a couple swats on each side, and we're done. So that's 600, and I'm going to skip to 800. I'm going to go right to 1200 because this is a softer blade. It's not so hard to do. I think we can just pass over that one, but if you've got a nice hard 60 Rockwell blade, then you probably want to hit each stage. It's just going to speed things up for you. And again, I like to do the tang first. I kind of concentrate on that area. And remember that your knife is ground on an angle. In this case, it's flat. It's like this. It's a small angle. But I like to put pressure down in here so that I'm pushing down that way. I never have trouble with it getting the top of the blade, but especially down in that tang area, a lot of times it just won't hit down there in that corner. So kind of putting that, just a little bit of pressure. You don't have to do it hard. Also, my top finger, rather than being back here, will be down here, and it just seems to make it follow the contour of the blade just that much more. And again, I would, hopefully you can see that, I would start here, and I work away from the edge, always away from the edge, never into the paper. If you do, you're just going to cut the paper and irritate yourself. If you do this totally correctly, you'll actually never touch your edge. If your edge is sharp, you shouldn't ever mess with it at all. And let's check our work. Oh yeah. Now I will go over this at some point again. There's going to be some tiny little marks in here, and I will go over that, take them out, because in the end I'm going to leave this blade totally mirror polished. I'm going to fix up the bolsters and everything else. Alright, here's a good case in point. Now I hope if I can get in that in there right and roll it, you're going to see a series of little brushy lines across there. And what those are, that's where I've started and stopped with the sandpaper. So now, because we're getting down here close to the finish, I'm going to do complete strokes all the way from the tang to the tip. And I'm not going to stop anywhere on that blade. Each and every time I'm going to make that until I bang, feel it hit the tang, go right on into it and stop. And make sure that I do those complete strokes. And that will take those little lines out. And now here I need to concentrate on the tip, so my finger goes on there, I put pressure on that, but again, the pressure may be on the end, but I'm doing complete strokes, going all the way to the tang, all the way back and forth. And then we'll touch our little swedge up here. And we're starting to get there. That's, again, here's what we started with. And there's where we are right now. And I'll let this paper dry, load up, and put less pressure on it. And that's going to make those scratches even smaller. And a lot of times on a soft knife like this, I never take it to the buffer. I can get it all the way up with the sandpaper, and I believe that'll be the case on this one. So that's our 1200, and we're going to skip the 15 again because of the softness of this. Normally we wouldn't. And let's see if we've got some. I may just have to go right to 2500. I don't think I've got any 2000 left at this point. Let's see if we've got here's a pretty good sheet. I don't think it's being used. Not used much anyway. Right, here's a good spot in here. And I always try to work this down as tight as I can get it right there. Windex, start down here, and again, now we're going to do complete strokes each and every time. And work our way up that paper. And on every one of these grits, go a little longer than you think you should need to. Remember to use the lighter strokes at the end. Allow the paper to dry out, to load up a little bit. A lot of times when you think you've got every little